and innovation and internet access, and the, meeting the preconditions for digital equality and digital participation, and of course, therefore, digital innovation and entrepreneurialism, which is where our research focus comes. So our efforts are really to provide an evidence base for informed policy making. And in that regard, we have, as I said, worked very closely with the previous Department of Communications and made inputs on the current cybercrime law, which was introduced first in 2015 under the new administration, and really, was perceived as an incredible clawback of the very strong democratic and human rights framework that we have. Fortunately, the institutionalization of those frameworks over the last 20 plus years since liberation means that we've been able to take those matters either to the courts or with the threat of a constitutional challenge, those have been adjusted. So the 2015 legislation has been amended. There have been considerable amendments to that. There is still a view that if it was passed now, it would not face constitutional muster. It would be taken to the Constitutional Court, particularly around constraints on freedom of expression, exposure of whistleblowers, and issues of hate speech. That's a very controversial one, and you could look at more on that. But I think in terms of BRICS and in terms of the progresses made across different BRICS countries and the potential regression in terms of rights and at the political level that we're seeing is really an area in which academia and civil society should be collaborating in order to support governments to return ourselves to the heydays of microcivil in Brazil and to the very progressive rights regime that we have in South Africa, and which is an example and many African countries do aspire to. That being said, I should say that the new bill neither ratifies the Budapest Convention, nor does it ratify the African Union Convention, and in some ways it's kind of carved this third way, which some people have seen in terms of kind of Global South as an effort to assert a different sort of G20, more kind of Global South perspective. But in other ways, it's also seen as possibly engineering a more conservative position politically that would enable what is seen as sort of increased surveillance and increased monitoring of citizens and limitations on certain freedoms. Just in terms of the issues of cooperation within the BRICS area, and just Luca's request that we sort of look ahead a bit, maybe we'll still come to those. But, dealing with the issues of the balkanization of the internet that was mentioned and the establishment of a BRICS internet or a portion of the internet that would be dedicated in that way, we, as part of a broader civil society movement in Africa and in South Africa, really see a role amongst academia and among civil society to work together with governments for greater national representation in multi-stakeholder internet governance forums, rather than the separation out of the open internet as we know it, and really providing an evidence base and a support base for more effective representation of Global South citizens in the existing forums of internet governance.
Excellent, and I think it's emerging very clearly that multi-stakeholder cooperation is quite essential if we want to stimulate innovation, if we want to protect user rights, and if you have an open internet and not a fragmented internet. I would like now to open the floor for comments and questions. So we have still a good 20 minutes for debate. So please go ahead if you have comments or questions. Just raise your hand. Don't be shy. Okay, please, please.
Okay. First of all, Luca, congratulations for this great event. I think that we should look ahead. Okay, we sometimes I always say that you cannot change the past and the present, but we can change our future. And I think I encourage very much the big countries to work together for the future. And I think the Internet of the future will be based on 5G. And so it would be very important for the big country to lead 5G technology, because thanks to 5G will be possible to change completely the way we collect information, so big data, cloud, low latency services, what we call Internet of Things, industrial Internet, which for these countries is very important. China is the biggest manufacturing country in the world, so industrial Internet. And it's important, maybe in your project you could include this idea. What the BRICS, how the BRICS could coordinate their policy to push 5G. Also because here we have a big problem, is the digital divide, which with 5G will become more and more important. Let's, for example, consider Brazil. It's a country I like very much, and lucky to go there quite often. What happened? That operators, they invest not enough, and they invest all in the same area. But there are many parts of the country which are, they don't have any coverage. And now with 5G, even already we cannot afford this with 3G, 4G, but with 5G will be even worse. So I think also this country should consider whether there should be also government-led project in order to build one 5G network in the whole country, and to be sure there is no digital divide, because we needed to ensure that the whole population can access to the Internet of the future. So I think I very much encourage this dialogue, the importance of BRIC they can have to build and to prepare the Internet of the future. And also, if I may say, to be more present in Brussels. Because sometimes the discussion on the future policy is only left to Europe and US. Where are the other countries? Why they don't participate more actively in the debate and put their view? I think this would be something very important.
If I can also add a comment on this, I think that the latest regulatory development in the US also demonstrate that there is a huge window of opportunity for BRICS countries in taking the lead of what my colleague at FGV calls the post-Western world. So in a world in which those who were leading policies and development, some of them are withdrawing, particularly one, and this is quite clear from the latest development, and this is a great opportunity for BRICS countries, exactly as it is an opportunity for environmental policies and the development of eco-friendly technology after the US left the Paris Agreement. I think it's a very great opportunity that will not repeat itself again in the next decades for BRICS countries to take the lead in innovation, in policy development, and again, for this, what is essential is also a continuous dialogue for government to receive feedback on how to properly craft, implement, execute policies and regulation, and how to craft a regulation that is not simply regulation. It's a regulation that it's an effective regulation that can work properly and define an open environment for business to thrive while empowering users. So I like very much the idea of government leading 5G projects. They also should develop maybe jointly policies in the BRICS on data openness, on data portability, on interoperability, because honestly speaking, the BRICS have account for almost half of the world's population. It's almost obvious that if they manage to have shared legally interoperable policies and build a sort of common market with common standards and interoperable policies that with compatible provisions, the rest of the world would follow, because it's a matter of simple maths. If you exactly, so I would like to have also I see that there are already some reactions on this. So first the gentleman there, then Marilia, and then.
So, hello, my name is Michiel Lenaas. I work for a charity called NLNet Foundation, and we've been writing for the European Commission their plans for the Next Generation Internet Initiative. And the positioning of BRICS countries in this is that we want to do, I mean, from my perspective, is that we want to kill the Trojan horse. That is the original internet, basically, in a sense. But we have to do it together. And I think collectively, I think we have a far stronger research in actually reaching a next generation internet rather than doing a Potemkin village of all these plans of all people in a hail shot of technologies. And I think it will go hand in hand with policies, and we fully have to create something that we don't have to trust because it is trustworthy, because the technologies actually are mathematically proven, and this is the line that we're following. We will tolerate no more jumps of leaps of faith. We'll try to establish real technology that you can actually measure, and as far as the 5G stuff is, I guess there's some comments to be made about allowing public innovation and have free public spectrum still available, which there are some issues with 5G.
And actually, with regards about spectrum policy, it's also an issue that we will debate this afternoon at the meeting of the Dynamic Coalition on Community Connectivity. We will present a collective book on community networks, and you might find some interesting ideas there as well. Marilia, please go ahead.
Thank you, Luca. Actually, I would not like to respond to your point, but perhaps to add another point on the table, an area in which I think that BRICS collaboration and cooperation would be key, and this area is cybersecurity. I wasn't here in the beginning of the discussions, and I apologize because I was a speaker in the session on the Digital Geneva Convention. And what we assessed in that session is that although we made progress on cybersecurity discussions, and we need to recognize that. We did produce a very important report coming from the UNGGE, the group of governmental experts on cybersecurity, in 2015. In 2017, they didn't manage to produce a report, and many say that the cause for this failure was a breaking in communication and dialogue that is due to the fact that different countries inside the UNGGE had different perspectives on what cybersecurity means. And these perspectives are very much aligned with a Western perception of what cybersecurity should encompass, and a perception that cybersecurity should encompass information security. And I think that everyone recognizes as well that there is no way to keep cyberspace stable, secure, and a space for economic growth, innovation, as you have been talking about, if there is no security. So this is a topic that is transversal and interests us all. The BRICS could be an excellent space to try to bring more clarity and to bring together different views on the fields of cybersecurity. And I think that the countries that are members of the BRICS could play an important role on that. And I think that if we don't do that, what we risk is that not only in the UNGGE, but also looking beyond, what I see is an increasing polarization between different stakeholders, between us and them, the good and the evil. And I think that we desperately need to escape these narratives, not necessarily to discuss a treaty as Microsoft proposed. A treaty could be interesting, but more reflection needs to be done about that. But there are several initiatives that are discussing norms for cyberspace. The Global Commission on the Stability of Cyberspace has just published a call for different stakeholders to protect the core of the internet, to keep the core infrastructures of the internet, such as backbones, the domain name system, away from attacks coming from governments or the private sector. So I think that cybersecurity is an interesting area of collaboration and a very important one.
Just to provide a quick comment, cybersecurity is indeed one of the main pillars that we will develop in the CyberBRICS project. So again, We are very open to not only to partners, but also to more funders. So please, if you have any interest in it, we are very happy to discuss about this right after the workshop. But now we have other various comments, one here, and someone there, and other two.
Thank you very much. Very interesting panel. My name is Izumi Aizu from Tokyo. How many people here are outside BRICS? Could you raise your hands like me? About half or 40%. I'd like to just offer my kind of comments or reactions to the very interesting presentations of all 5 BRICS. Being a civil society member for a long time, this is my 12th IGF, and we really liked one in Russia. I mean, in Brazil, and would like to have one in Russia. Okay, yeah, and been there twice. Anyway, are we going back? Well, my original naive question is, are we going back to the national government sovereignty regime that sort of internet made with the globalization eroding the national borders? And do we know really, well, of course, the IP addresses know actually the national border, but many of the activities over that are crossing the borders. And we so far have enjoyed that very much. And to add that is the multi-stakeholder where the very weak civil society voices are being taken into account in the very early stage of the WSIS. We were part of, with other, say, Brazilian and other civil society members like Carlos Afonso. And what I heard from these presentations were very interesting, especially from China, that there are certain sectors that the government will dominate, and economic activities you don't. And citizen activities, I'm not too sure where you put them there. While I don't want to go too much into details of free speech in China and stuff, but we are very aware of that. And we are worried a little bit that excessive regulation will stifle the innovation. And you cannot easily demarcate what are the economic activities and what are the citizens' activities and what are the regulatory government activities. It all intersect, crossover. And so do we really have the capacity to enforce what your government is thinking to exercise? There are always the bypasses and other means and ways, technical or business-wise. And usually the governments are late to catch behind, because until the problem arises in a mass, you cannot react too well. And no matter how smart the governments are, I believe it's that the people's wisdom will go ahead. Perhaps, finally, I'd like to suggest, like this one, but more of the dialogue, not only amongst the BRICS countries, but BRICS and other neighboring countries, such as, for me, in Japan and China, perhaps Korea, but many others, because what we are facing is a global problem. It's not a BRICS problem. So in that, I really appreciate this opportunity, but also appreciate that you listen to the civil society voices from outside the BRICS. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this comment. I would take another 2 comments before opening for remarks here. So I saw that there were Christian and then Sunil there.
Thank you very much. I have a question for the panel as a whole, and it's about those opportunities within BRICS. I know it's a strange question after the previous person. Still, I'll kind of try to ask it. Do you see any, in the reasonably foreseeable future, any BRICS initiatives aimed at intermediary liability or online content regulation as a general? And would you see within any kind of joint BRICS actions in this field any positions on the use of algorithms, computer programs, to filter or detect undesirable content or basically illegal content? Do you? This is the question for the whole panel. So whoever.
It's a very specific and direct question. I think we will have answers here right after Sunil's comment.
I just wanted to react to Izumi's comment. I wasn't planning to say anything here, but I found it hard to resist. I'd like to protest the demonization of China at the IGF for the last 12 meetings. It constantly happens. The most evil actor when it comes to a nation state is not China, it is the United States. The Snowden revelations demonstrate very clearly that United States has infringed human rights across the world. And the type of speech that the United States and other developing countries, especially those that are active at the World Intellectual Property Organization, censor, is the speech that is most important for citizens. It is music, it is books, it is movies. So those are the most evil actors when it comes to nation states. Second, I'd like to protest the valorization of the multi-stakeholder model. It has produced very little in terms of real output. It is actually an excuse, farce, which is basically used to explain a kind of laissez-faire forbearance model where mega corporations are allowed to get away with all sorts of things, and civil society is being used as pawns because somehow this seat at the table seems to justify whatever the mega corporations do. So the BRICS break away from this tradition of 12 years is a welcome thing. Perhaps we will have fresh ideas from other corners of the world, and therefore I strongly support what you're doing, Luca, and what your colleagues up there are advocating. Thank you.
I totally agree with your latest comment, Sunil, and I would take some reactions from the floor and then some more comments here.
Thank you. There are so many points that were raised. I made a few notes. I try to be as brief as I can.
Take your time.
Well, first of all, I think in the course of the discussion there was, I think, the information that even last year, some actions were taken in Brazil and other places in regard to restricting access to it. I think we should differentiate sometimes, or it's very important to differentiate because the government is not monolithic. We have the executive, you have the Congress, you have justice. So some measures are sometimes taken by the executive, which was not the case, sometimes by Congress, who has its own proceedings, and sometimes by justice, which was the case in Brazil. And there's not much we can do as executive because those are independent branches, and they have internal ways to deal with it. So in the case of Brazil, there were a few occasions in which individual justice decided to block, but then it was overruled by the justice itself in higher courts. So it's nothing to do with the intent of government to do this or that. It's just a recognition of the separation of powers and the power justice has to do to apply the law, to interpret the law, and sometimes to supplement the law in ways that sometimes go even against the intent of the original proponent. So that's part of the democracy, and I think that happens everywhere in all occasions. The second point I'd like to raise is that any kind of international cooperation we engage, I'm saying the obvious thing, we should be respectful of our national laws and regulations. In the case of Brazil, we have Marco Civil, we have the principles that guide Net Civil. So either when we engage at the UN or bilaterally or in the context of BRICS, we are not deviating from what is in Marco Civil. We are not being flexible about anything that is there. We will cooperate to the extent that the cooperation will be consistent and compatible with the views and the laws that are enshrined in our internal system. So I heard at some point there is a new BRICS internet being, there's no such thing. The BRICS, such a BRICS internet would be against our vision of how this should function. Another point that I think was important is, I think it was raised by Professor, are we going back to the national sovereignty? Well, I think the reality and the practicality is that the two things live together, and they will live together forever as we can envision. So the fact that the internet is borderless, is a unified resource. It does not change the reality of national jurisdictions. Actually, there is a very important project being developed by Bertrand de la Chapelle and others, exactly exploring that contradiction between having a unified global resource, living together and having to coexist with the national jurisdictions. So I think everything we do in international cooperation is trying to make sure that at the global level some concepts, some values are shared by everyone, that we can demonstrate to individual government that have sovereignty within their space, that it is in their best interest to act in that or that. Otherwise, they will be, it is sovereignty that will be exercised, and it is, this has not been changed with the WSIS outcomes or the multi-stakeholder approach. But it's something that, in the case of Brazil, we uphold the multi-stakeholder approach, and we surely will defend it. Also, a point was, should the BRICS be discussing those things among themselves? Again, the discussion within BRICS is taking shape. We are exploring what possible avenues of cooperation will be there. We want to explore them to the fullest extent possible, in a way, again, compatible with each member state's own internal vision, policies, and regulations. So I would not say maybe it's not the moment now to expand this, because this is yet taking place. On the other hand, we have strong dialogue with many other partners around the world. We have structured, in the case of Brazil, structured dialogue with the US, with the European Union, with the countries in our region. In the context of Mercosur, this is also taking shape. So it is not something excluded that we are discussing within BRICS and not discussing with, and I think this is the same. It happens with China, with Russia. It's part of being working in international environments. And I think the last question, whether it would be feasible for BRICS to develop a common position or to lead some, I don't think it is something we could envision for the moment. As again, the discussion is taking shape. There are, even among BRICS, sometimes different nuances, different approaches to things. So part of the framework agreement is to explore the possibility to have joint positions in even that can be taken to international fora. But I would say, very frankly, for the moment, we cannot envision something in that regard. Particularly dealing with substantive issues that are being discussed even internally in each country with different approaches. And so, again, I think it's not that we are discussing with BRICS that we want to solve everything and bring a solution to every problem. That's not the case. But again, it's a context we value and we want to explore to full extent possible.
And I'm sure that some research on the matter may be very beneficial to further initiatives. I had a comment from the gentleman here that has been so kind to wait for 20 minutes, and then I have Tatiana. And I actually made a mistake. We are finishing at 20 past 1, so we still have 15 minutes for debate. So please, go ahead, and then Tatiana.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, you have the initiative of BRICS is a challenging journey. You have started this journey, and we are certain and confident that you continue this journey with success. What I could say, we are not here to admire or criticize multi-stakeholders. In the document 24 in Net Mundial that I wrote, I mentioned multi-stakeholder approach. There are many models in that. So nobody is against a multi-stakeholder approach. It is not perfect. It is shaky. It has weak points, but for the time being, we do not make the perfection enemy of goods. For the time being. For Mr. Utsumi, you shouldn't be worried. BRICS could be BRICS plus, and that plus could be any. he talked about Japan, Korea. There might be other people very interested and very active in the area. What I could say that the majority of the community, they now face with some sort of frustrations for something which has not been replied. Perhaps BRICS or BRICS Plus would be in a position to reply some of those frustrations, including cybersecurity, which, as far as I know, working in this area for many, many years, there is very little progress. We're expanding everywhere, but never we concentrating to the point. I'm sorry, it's just going all the way around, but no. So I think that could reply to that. There are other points in the existing situations, which I think, as the distinguished colleague mentioned, that no one is going to kill any other system, any other approach, but this is something, competition and innovations is always good, is always helping. Who understood 20 years ago that the GSM would have so many competition, so many? Who could imagine 30 years ago that China would be so fast developing, or Russia and others, and India and others, South Africa? So I think you have a good power together. The only thing is very, very important is a very well-structured collaboration and cooperation, and so on. That is important. So I don't want to take the time of the colleagues, but I think that this is as I mentioned, a traveling or journey with challenges, but challenging journey, but we'll continue that, and I'm sure that we will succeed. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one more point that is a new one, not addressing any of the previous ones. So, of course, internet and technology are important parts of innovative future, but so are people. And what I evidenced when I worked this year in Silicon Valley is there is a huge brain drain of tech talent from BRICS countries to United States. Engineers, entrepreneurs, talented tech specialists from Russia, China, India, Brazil go to start their startups in Silicon Valley in United States instead of doing that in their own countries. And that is a big problem that will impact the innovative future of those countries at some point. So what I think is really important and to think about joint initiative of BRICS countries to develop innovative ecosystem locally or internationally in these regions, to keep those talents, to keep those entrepreneurs, to provide them opportunities to start their innovative businesses, perhaps to support venture capital and private capital, which is obviously part of the problem, and also build accelerators, incubators, provide education to those entrepreneurs, build foster community of experts. So just to build our own BRICS Silicon Valley as an alternative for those young talents to build the innovative future in their countries. So I think that's important.
And I would also raise awareness on the fact that the BRICS country have some of the most youngest population in the world. So not with all due respect for people that have already a lot of white hair in their head, the youngest are usually the more innovative and the more inclined to risk taking. So that is another incredible asset for BRICS that they should exploit.
Yeah. I think, Tatiana, building off of that a little bit, a strong theme that has come out in the Indian context has been the concept of data democracy, and the idea that not only the individual owns the data, but also as a country you have control over your data and you benefit from it, avoiding situations like data colonization where Google and Facebook have access to all of your national data. To answer a couple of the questions that came up quickly, the question about intermediate liability and filtering of content, at least from the Indian context, we haven't seen something like that. A couple of years back, we saw a proposal for a social media monitoring lab that would look at social content on social media, but from a national security perspective and not from an actual regulating that context. So what we're seeing in Europe, we haven't necessarily seen in India. I would agree with the emphasis on cybersecurity as an area of collaboration within the BRICS countries. I think a forum for this could be the governmental group of experts. I know some BRICS countries collaborate or contribute to this, but it would be interesting to see all the BRICS countries contributing to this. And language is an important place to start at, as is the focus area of cooperation and the form of coordination between the countries.
Yes, Luca, may I ask you again, sorry. I think, sorry if I insist on this point, what the matter is the future. And if BRICS focus too much the attention on the past, on the present, the problem which we have to deal with, I think this is not enough. We have to, BRICS should focus on how to prepare the ground for the future. 5G is a revolution, and it's coming very fast. I don't see BRIC ready for this revolution. And the challenge of 5G in cybersecurity will be completely different from what we are discussing today. So be ready for the future. Think about the future. Let's prepare the ground for the future. And also, I don't know how much matter, but I think BRIC should also think of how they can support and whether they support the Silk Road, because the Silk Road it's a very important project, and there are many aspects in the digital Silk Road, like smart cities, like e-government, health services, which are very important for people, for citizens, because at the end of the story, digital is something that should help people to live better. And so we should never forget this. Otherwise the debate is too bureaucratic and too... So we are here to, and government are here to help people to increase their quality of life. Think of what we can do today thanks to new technology in Brazil with agriculture and other applications. So my advice, and I think Luca, and I hope Luca will really continue to work on this because he's doing a very, very good work, is let's focus on the future. Let's prepare for the future. Otherwise, BRIC will be not in the game.
I see there's a couple of reactions there, so Alison, please go ahead. And then there is this lady that is waiting.
Sorry, I was responding to your call earlier for closing remarks, so maybe if these are follow-on questions, they should go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so we can have a couple of extra comments or questions. The lady there, and then Felix. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm Cindineia Cantanhede. I'm a law student from São Luís, Maranhão in Brazil, and I'm also part of Youth IGF. So I would like to comment on my own experience. I first heard of BRICS in elementary school, and I got fascinated by it. But I don't see this issue approached in my community. So my question goes on how to connect the citizens of these countries, which are part of BRIC as students and workers, to discuss these issues related to this group, including through CyberBRICS project, in a way that will be recognition and connection not only between our governments, but between our people. So it's really important that we come to discuss these issues, but how can we get this as a subject between the people who are in this country in a way they feel connected, and we're gonna in some way guarantee that they're gonna continue this partnership. So thank you.
As I was, it's a very important remark, and as I was saying at the very beginning, today's discussion should be the start of a long journey, as the gentleman was suggesting here. So that is a very important element that we should consider, and that we will consider. So thank you very much for raising it. And Felix.
Yes, Felix Blanc, currently a research fellow at the FGV CTS in Rio, and also a member of Internet Without Borders NGO based in France. My research focuses on submarine cables and infrastructure of Internet. And in the past, in 2014, when the development bank was created, there was a project called the BRICS, like linking the BRICS together. Since then, it seems that there is kind of diverging views or different projects, like the Silk Road for China, and we have project between the Europe and Brazil currently, but not anymore. It is not anymore question of kind of common project offering an alternative route to communication than the existing ones, namely the one between the US and China, the Pacific Road, and the North Atlantic ones, which is the most used today. So my question is there any kind of perspective for not only investment in infrastructure, but also of new model of governance, given that net neutrality has been endangered on the current model of governing infrastructure. Thank you.
That's a very good comment to start the final round of comments. So maybe I would ask to Benedicto and Rashid to start commenting on this, whether the project of a BRICS cable connecting the all BRICS is still something in the list of priorities of the governments, or if it's something that has been put on hold, waiting for different times.
Well, thank you. I think, unfortunately, I may not be in a position to respond accurately. To my understanding, to the discussions I have been following, there are a number of projects that are being explored at this moment. On top of that is the cable between Brazil and Europe through Portugal, Link. I think there is also a cable to Angola. The BRICS cable, as far as I know, is something that is somewhat in the, but I would not say, and probably not with the same level of priority for the moment. But I think to the extent it can be funded, we think it might give yet another possibility for an alternative link. Thank you.
Let me answer first about the 5G, because the colleague was asking 2 times about 5G. From a technical point of view, 5G is not an innovation. I mean, the 2G was TDMA, first G was analog, 3G was OFDM, and FDMA, and 4G and 5G, they are OFDM. I mean, the problem is about the frequencies, because you need to allocate more frequencies. That hasn't been, decided even on WRC 15 back 2 years ago in ITU. There are many countries that still, have their whatever needs in this particular spectrum that is going to be allocated for 5G. Without 5G, it's impossible actually to deploy anything that we pretend to call the digital economy. I mean, the latency is the main issue. That's why, first you need, there are expectations about 2019 WRC, the next one, where all countries will be able to reach consensus when it comes to the frequencies. Now, when it comes to the vendors, the producers of the 5G equipment, we're not talking about internet anymore. They are struggling a lot. Ericsson is reporting for many years already the negative margin. There's only one company that was reporting double-digit margin, that was Huawei, which is not, was ZTE. Huawei was not, because Huawei is not, is not in the stock exchange, in the stock market. Now, this is the situation we have with producers. Having these kind of ambitious projects, we at the same time have just a handful of producers of this equipment, and they are struggling very much in order, because the prices are low, they're competing with each other. Previously, the operators were harvesting, enjoying this kind of competition between the producers, which eventually led to the fact that many producers are gone, like Siemens, Alcatel, Nortel, Motorola, whatever. many companies. Now, I mean, now they are starting to suffer from the OTT, and the cause of these operators' kind of problems is internet and internet services, messengers, whatever. There's no unique policy in regards to this one. I mean, we know about the tech neutrality act that has been adopted recently in USA. Of course, I mean, countries like ours, we're not the producers. We're looking and falling on everything which is going on around the globe. So before we agree on all these issues, that we need to support operators, we need to support producers, we need somehow to control internet giants that are getting their money from exterritorial, so to say. I mean, they're not paying. That means that we had recently with GSMA a workshop with our operators. Most of the operators, they said that GSM was actually the last golden age for the operators because they haven't returned their investments even from 3G, not talking about 4G, and we're still forcing them actually to deploy this network, and they're afraid to miss, you know, the frequencies. That's why they're fighting for the frequencies. However, they are not investing that much as is required in order to shift the economy towards digital one. This is the problem. Now with the cables, I don't think there's a need actually to have a special cable for BRICS. That everything depends on the economical relationship and integration between countries. I mean, Russia and China were much closer partners when it comes to the economy than we and South Africa. So just going from the business needs, you go for the cable, this or that kind of. And there are now, I mean, the global issues are changing, the climate is changing, and now we're talking with Finland and Northern Europe to lay the cable from Finland and Sweden and Denmark and Norway through the North Pole, Northern Ocean to China, and that will, you know, give a lot of opportunities to actually the cable itself. But besides cable, there's a route for transportation from China to Europe through this northern cable. These are the issues. I think everything, all countries, all governments, we are the starting point for consideration. Any project is the business needs. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Alison, and then we can have some concluding remark and wrap up.
I just wanted to pick up on some of the points that were made about the fragmentation, the collaboration of BRICS countries and where that can happen, and perhaps not polarize our participation in internet governance as one or the other. I think you know, the vilification of one party instead of another party doesn't actually resolve the issues of the citizens in those countries. And I think the fact that within BRICS there are extremely different political systems and extremely different economic systems and population sizes, as just has been mentioned. I think the existence of BRIC, the viability of it, the potential of it to take it forward for innovation, etc., depends on a certain pragmatism that we have to accept. However, I think there is a point of expediency where I raise again the issues of, you know, of human rights and various things that will, you know, at some point are going to have to, or are likely to come up as issues. So just referring to some of the projects that we might pursue, I think there's enormous potential for us from a research perspective, which was the underlying thing of this, to collaborate across these different regions with their very different economic models, their governance models, and their rights models. So socioeconomic priority right, you know, rights, second generation rights above first generation rights, etc. And I think these are absolutely critical to engage with if we are going to engage effectively as BRICS or as BRICS Plus within the existing internet governance structures. because much as we may not like them, and I think much as many of us think the multi-stakeholder system is flawed, these are the systems that are going to exist. And you know, basically excluding ourselves from them will further exclude us and probably make us less able to influence global governance anyway. So I would really argue for a sort of very pragmatic but not expedient engagement as BRICS around common issues, and of course alliances with other countries where those alliances exist. I think the timing of various activities within BRICS is very critical. I think we're globally in a very politically conservative global environment. I think the aspect, the nature of global politics and global political economy make the establishment of BRICS at this time a very particular thing that I would caution certain sort of expediency around. Just in terms of the activities that were posed, I think cybersecurity is a critical issue. And I think it's an issue where we've seen very repressive governments being the first movers on cybersecurity without concern for citizenry, because it's being offered at international level, and with your cybersecurity package goes your surveillance package, and no human rights frameworks for activity at all. So I think if there's a role for BRICS, it would be to imbue that critical cybersecurity framework that we need, and reassessment of norms and all those, I think, really important points that you made from a global south or a wider than non-aligned movement, whatever one wants to call it, but BRICS kind of perspective. So I think there's a lot of room there. The other thing I just wanted to flag that I think is really a valuable research area for us, but also an issue of international engagement, is around data governance. Because I think that really is something that cuts across our national sovereignty issues and our compelled engagement in a global economy. And I think whether it's about, algorithm management or whether it's, big data analytics or whatever it is, I think there's really an important program for us, because that is, both an outcome and the underpinnings of an innovation system.
So unless someone has some very urgent...
Very quickly, I want to add it up that we have a wonderful, wonderful program called the Oral History of the Internet, and every country have a wonderful, extraordinary story about how the Internet started in your own country. We love to listen to that. We like to document that. Our documented stuff will be open to the public, will be shared with the Internet Archives and the Computer History Museum based in the United States, and we'll definitely build like online and a home for all this. I would love to share, you could share us and your internet story, not just BRIC countries, and also around the whole world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have a very last comment from Tatiana, and then we can...
very short. And I wanted to thank you so much, everybody who stayed here for the break. And I see a lot of synergy and similar challenges that BRICS countries share. So it is really important, Luca, to have more of such open and transparent discussions on emerging issues. And my personal hope from this forum is perhaps sometimes in the nearest future, UN still will consider to come up with a declaration for digital rights.
Excellent. And as everyone is escaping for lunch, we will not keep you any further. So thank you very much for your participation, and let's have a good lunch together.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. Can you give me a card? Okay, I guess. Oh, yeah. All right. Hey, thank you very much. Hey, thank you. Thank you. I'm from Japan. You know, 12 of us. You say 12 or 13?
12 IGF. You know, this is Xiaomi.
Yes,
Xiaomi. And this was given from your government at the Second World Internet Conference.
So where are you based? You Tokyo?
In Tokyo, yeah. But I was invited to the first and second World Internet Conference, but not the third and this year's one. Thank you. This is very also interesting that in 2003, I was asked by Japanese government and the Bank of International Cooperation to the evaluation study of the Europe-China's economic information, state economic information system. Do you know of that?
Yes.
Which is the sort of early attempt of the government to lay the internet infrastructure. So I visited 10 cities in China. I made a comprehensive report.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
We like to go to Japan someday and interview some like internet pioneers in your country. Yeah.
So you're from?
I'm from the United States.
Okay. Okay, and he's from Soto.
From Beijing.
Okay.
And he also the dean of this one. He has own company called CyberBRICS. Yeah, yeah. That's what his main work. Yeah.
Wait. So
yeah, it's good.
So
this is his, and he's also the dean of
in Santo, not Beijing, but
Shantou. But he also have a company and a think tank and run his think tank. That's
Do you know Liu Tong? Liu Tong?
Yes.
That's my oldest friend. We met in 1994. I was in the first China Internet Conference. Yeah. Professor Li Xin. Or Madam Fu.
Yes.
All my friends.
So that's
they know me.
所以这个那个日本这块就是
没问题，我都说了
说了吧
And you know, maybe later on, and I'll bother you with an email and get your recommendations on who are the Japanese we should meet.
But Hualin Chan.
Yeah. And this is what is.
Yeah. Where's Madam Fu?
Madam Fu was. Where's Madam Fu?
Madam Fu. Madam Fu.
Right.
Come and interview me.
Yes, absolutely. And
I have a lot to say.
Yeah, you have a lot to say.
Because we have to escape. So, yeah, eventually. We can only stay a short time. Can I ask you to understand one because we have to escape? Yes, that's great. No, we got it.
No, that's not mine.
Yes. Hello, everyone, and may I ask those from the previous meeting to continue their discussions outside as we have our annual general meeting or general assembly here of the IGF Support Association. But it was very unfortunate I didn't realize there was no space between the two meetings, and obviously it always takes some time for people to leave the room and for new people to come in and settle. But it is what it is, and it is. Yeah, and can I? So may I ask those people in the room who are not members of the IGF Support Association to be so kind and leave the room and continue their discussions outside?
Oh, thank you.
Unless, of course, you want to join on the spot.
We have a meeting here now of the IGF Support Association. You are welcome to join as members, and we take the money for the annual membership due. And why don't you move a bit closer to, not as far away as possible in this room?
I have to escape at some point, Marcus. It's not personal. I'm sitting near the door. But do give me an opportunity to thank Kyle for all the work he's done to help us. Okay?
Okay. We also have Tarek, one of our members of the executive committee, has a hard stop as he has a meeting he cannot miss, so he will have to leave shortly after 2. Yes. Yeah.
Is Kyle in the room?
Kyle is in the room, yes. We have made for transcription, so we have a live transcription of the meeting. That was Andrea's initiative. And yes, it is going up there, so that's great. So we have live transcription, and that's also available for those who participate remotely. Do we have remote participants online? Well, Kyle is setting it up. Sorry, that takes obviously always a little bit of time, and we don't really have that time to get the room ready as there was another meeting in this room. We have sent out an agenda for the meeting, and can you show the agenda on? That is the annual report, but we have sent the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. Well, I can briefly run it through it. It is adoption of the agenda, approval of the record of the 2016 General Assembly, and the third item is election of 3 members of the Executive Committee. The fourth member is adoption of the contents of the report and financial statement for the year, and the fifth is approval of the annual budget. The sixth is the discharge of the Executive Committee, and the seventh is annual any other business. Now you have seen the agenda. I sent it out in time. Our articles of association say it should be sent out at least 10 days beforehand. We sent it out well before that. Is there any comment on that, or can we assume we have agreement on the agenda? Eduardo encourages me to gavel it out, so the agenda is approved. I would suggest then that we start with the election of board of executive committee members. I have sent out an email to the list informing you that Subi has stepped down from the executive committee due to her other commitments. So an extra seat would be filled. The articles of association leave room for that. All they say is we should have at least 5 members of the executive committee and not more than 9. Currently we are 8 members, but the executive committee feels we are better served with 9 members. But there's no obligation to elect a 9th member. And as it happens, 2 members of the executive committee, Tarek and Jimson, their term is up, but they are ready to stand for another term. So we need to vote, and we also said we invite for candidates, but we have not received any candidate on the list. Sorry? Yeah, but in order to be elected to the executive committee, you need to be a member. And the name you mentioned is not a member, and he has not paid his membership due.
It's Marilyn, since we're being transcribed. Yes, I just received an email for him. He has been trying to get here from the airport for the past 2 hours. He had intended to see Kyle to pay his dues. And I have the $25 that I can pay on his behalf. He's asked me if I would do that, and Nilmini Rubin has been asked to read his statement. I understand the problem, but he's been stuck at the airport, and his plane was canceled yesterday. So in fairness to consider him, I'd like to give Kyle his Manu's $25 and let Nilmini read the statement.
Okay, thank you for that. I was not aware that he was stuck at the airport. I tried to reach him. Okay, before we read the statement, I would just also like to say a few words. Obviously, what we expect from a member of the executive committee, that is first and foremost to participate in our activities. We have roughly 4 to 6 meetings of the, I think we have more 6 meetings of the executive committee in the year. There can be physical meetings. We had them in the margins usually of the ICANN meetings, but there can also be telephone conferences, and we hope then that the executive committee members engage, they reach out and find us new members, and also find us new donors who contribute financially to the benefit of the association. Now we have 2 sitting members. We would also like to say them a few words to present their candidates, and we have 1 candidate of an incoming IGFSA member, and you have a statement you would like to read out. Please do so, and state your name beforehand.
Thank you. I'm Nilmini Rubin. I'm a vice president with Tetra Tech now, and I previously worked for the U.S. Congress, where I worked closely with Manu Bhardwaj when he was at the State Department. And I'm happy to read his statement of interest. So Manu Bhardwaj is now the Vice President for Research and Insights at MasterCard's Center for Inclusive Growth. And his statement of interest for election to the IGFSA Executive Committee continues as, I'm asking for your support for my election to the IGFSA Executive Committee for the open seat, despite being stuck in an airport. I am a long-standing supporter of the IGF itself, and during my years as a diplomat, before moving to the business sector and financial services at MasterCard's Center for Innovation, I was privileged to participate actively in the IGF, both directly and in encouraging strong engagement from other governments, the private sector, and civil society, and the technical community. I fully support IGF-SA's core mission activities and want to contribute to a significant recruitment in memberships and in seeking new and broadened sources of funding. The mission of IGF-SA is critical to support the IGF Secretariat, but also the national and regional IGFs. Ideally, we would see a significant increase in new members during 2018. And if all of us pledge to recruit just 2 new members each as IGF-FSA members, we can see a tripling of the IGF-SA, I'm sorry, that's such a hard acronym, memberships in just 1 year. On the area of fundraising, I am very committed to working with the fellow board members to raise the profile and visibility of the IGF-SA and in seeking additional funding contributors. It would be an honor to join others on the IGF-SA Executive Committee and to be more actively engaged to contribute to achieve the IGF-SA mission so that we can continue to make a vital contribution to supporting the IGF itself and the NRIs. The NRIs are particularly important in my view as formerly a career diplomat, and I'm very well aware of the critical interdependency of seeking global policy aspirational changes to ensure the multi-stakeholder model, but also that we work to change policy and laws at the national levels. I believe that the synergy between the IGF itself and the bottom-up multi-stakeholder engagement of the NRIs themselves is a unique and critical platform that IGF-SA, through increasing its contribution and memberships, must enhance even further. I would welcome your support to my nomination and support my election to the IGF-SA Executive Committee. I am happy to respond to questions from IGF-SA members later.
When I'm on, finally.
And he provides his bio, which I won't read unless you'd like me to.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think that's very much also the spirit of what we are looking for in a member of the Executive Committee. So we have a candidate in absentia, so to speak, who is a prospective is also a member in absentia, as somebody else paid on his behalf.
No, it's his money.
It's his money, okay. He will get it back. And welcome to Vince Cerf, who should be our honorary member. I know you're a member, yes. Welcome. It's an honor to have you here. And could I invite Tarek and Jim to also say a few words? Tarek first, maybe.
Thank you very much, Marcos. Good afternoon. My name is Tarek Kamel. I'm member of the Executive Committee for the last 3 years of IGF-SA. As such, I have been delighted to serve on the Executive Committee of the IGF-SA, that I see it becoming very active in supporting the global IGF, but more and more importantly, in my opinion, the national and regional IGFs. I think that the IGF-SA has a real mission that it is accomplishing and fulfilling in supporting the mushrooming national and regional IGFs that we are all very proud of, and that really keeps the spirit of the IGF going on a global level. Each time when we see a request coming from a regional or national IGF that is newly established, one really gets very happy about the process. These are new faces, newcomers to the process that are convinced with the multi-stakeholder model and the spirit of the multi-stakeholder model on a global level. I think the mentoring that the IGF-SA is doing for those national and regional IGF is really something that will be remembered and will be recognized for a long time. I want to mention very specifically Marlene and the work that she is doing in this direction. We are all supporting her since it is really a hand-holding process for many new players, as we were handheld one day, time ago. I want to say by Vince Cerf and George Radowskis and others. I will not say when exactly, but you can imagine. So seeing that really the executive committee members and the IGF SA providing different types of support in kind or financial support or remote participation or supporting material for the national and regional IGFs is something that I would like to contribute to as a process for the spirit of the multi-stakeholder model. So once again, I am happy to put my name forward, and I hope that I would get the support of the General Assembly to be again a member and to serve at the Executive Committee for the next couple of years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tarek. Jimson, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very, very much. Distinguished Chair, members of the Executive Committee, members of IGF SA, the father of the Internet, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jimson Olufuye. I have the privilege of being the chair of the private sector-led 30-nation membership of the Africa ICT Alliance. I'm also, as part of my day job, the CEO of Contemporary Consulting. We build data centers and we also mitigate information security issues, among other things. I'm so happy to be a member of the Executive Committee of IGF SA, knowing fully well that I have the privilege of being at the room when the idea was mooted by our dear Marilyn Cade, Marcus Kuma in 2011 during the United Nations CSTD Working Group on IGF Improvement, that we need to seek ways, innovative ways of raising funding to support the IGF, the proliferation of IGF. I'm so happy again that we have been fulfilling our mandate over time, and I will be happy to see this sustained. It has brought in diversity across the world, and as Tariq said, requests that come every time, that we want to do this, want to do that. So it makes us very happy. It makes me very happy that the dream is being realized, and I want it sustained. So that's why I'm putting up forward my name, hoping that you support me for election for another term. Let us keep the momentum going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we have 3 candidates, but for good order and good form, I think I have to ask, is there any other candidate interested in standing for election? And in order to stand, you have to be a member, and also we have a little bit of a gray zone in our Articles of Association. You may recall last year we changed the Articles of Association. Originally it said if you don't pay your annual membership due, you get expelled automatically, and last year we said no, excommunicated. We thought that's not really our objective. Our objective is to grow in membership, and we do understand that sometimes people forget to pay or whatever, so there's no automaticity anymore. You are a member automatically upon payment of membership, but you are expected to pay your annual membership due, but we don't have any specification in our bylaws now to say what happens if you don't pay. It doesn't say specifically that you don't have the right to vote, but we had a discussion. We said it's general understanding that in order to vote you should be a member in good standing, and that would mean also that you pay your annual membership due. So if you are interested in standing, only do so if you have paid your membership due. And the same goes to voting. We can check, should it be a question of one vote or two, whether all the votes are in good form, but we expect you are all honorable people, that you would abstain from voting if you're in arrears of paying your membership due, and we hope that all of you have paid, and many of you came to our booth just to pay physically in cash, because sometimes the online payment can be complex or difficult, can be rejected due to an algorithm PayPal has to prevent fraud. Then also some bona fide payments can get rejected. And as our bank account is in Switzerland, that adds an additional complexity. But for a transfer for PayPal, I think in the algorithm. But having said all that, I assume that you are all people of good faith and have fulfilled your obligations. Question then, is there anybody willing to stand?
I just have a question.
Yes?
What if we don't know what our status is?
Oh, you can always check. We have a computer and yes. Jen is here and can check, yes.
I actually don't know whether
Well, there is that.
a member in good standing.
There is that, but you are most welcome to join us at the booth, and you can also pay cash. It's 25 francs or $25. Yes. Andrea has a question, please.
Yes, it's a request. Vinton, can you speak into a microphone? Because otherwise we don't capture you on the captioning. Thank you, dear.
I know better. Thank you, Andrea.
I know you know better. I know.
Well, the question was that he didn't know whether he was a member in good standing. And the answer was, we can check.
This is Avery. I also added for information's sake that somewhere within the 1,000 of emails he gets a day, there was one that said his membership was due.
So now we need a new algorithm.
Well, as I said, we do understand it can be negligence, it can be oversight, but it's a small amount, but it can be bothersome actually to run after it to make sure you pay it. Okay, so I ask for the last time, is there anybody willing to stand as for the 3 seats which are contested? Otherwise, I think if that is not the case, I count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Can I take it then that we can approve all 3 candidates by acclamation?
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you for that. So that means we have a board executive committee of 9 members, and our 2 incumbents have been re-elected. I didn't expect otherwise, and we have a 9th member who hopefully may be able to join us before the meeting.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. So
Thank you on his behalf.
so you will have the opportunity to meet our new executive committee member. For those who don't know him, I mean, Manu was very visible when he worked for State Department and very much appreciated. So we're very happy to have him on board. So can we then move to all the business we have to go through? The agenda is up on the screen. The next item will be approval of the record of the 2016 General Assembly. It has been up on our website as a draft for some time, but it needs, formally speaking, it needs to be approved by the General Assembly, as it's the summary record of the General Assembly. The Executive Committee approved the draft and agreed to put it forward for approval to the General Assembly. So can I take it then? Is there any discussion? Does anybody wish a discussion on the summary record of last year's General Assembly? I can't see any hand up, and I then take it that this is not the case. And can I also take it then that we approve the summary record of last year's General Assembly? I see nodding in the room, so I take it that this record has been approved. And we have done with agenda item 3. That brings us then to the substantive discussion. That will be adoption of the contents of the report and financial statement for the year. And I would like to ask Kyle, can you pull it up on the screen? Then we can walk you through it. I had also sent it out as an email, but you find it on the IGFSA website. It is up under reports. it is there up on the screen. It may be difficult to read from this distance. Is it possible to increase the font size? In any case, the first, it goes through the structures of the association and refers to, can you scroll up? The General Assembly, that we held the General Assembly in Guadalajara. Still a bit up, yeah. And then, yes, there, now we can scroll down. Can you make it bigger? And it says the General Assembly approved the 2017 budget allocation, and it goes on to explain the change in the Articles of Association regarding the membership, that what I had mentioned before, that we did not make non-payment a reason for exclusion. And it goes on, can you scroll down, that the following 4 candidates were elected to the IGF-SA Executive Committee. No, higher up. It's Aridoria, myself, Karen McCabe, and Eduardo were elected as new members of the Executive Committee. And then further down it gives the composition of the Executive Committee as it was last year. And it adds that Subi resigned in middle of the year. And it goes on, can you keep scrolling down, that the meetings we held, and then we have the new individual members that we accepted. There were 12 new individual members, and scroll down, and 1 organizational member, the Arab World Internet Institute. And then to the activities,